The sun beat down on Khartoum on that fateful April day in 2023. The air, normally thick with the scent of spices and the murmur of daily life, crackled with tension. What began as a political crisis, a struggle for power at the highest levels of Sudan's fragile government, quickly escalated into open warfare. The Sudanese armed forces, nominally the protectors of the nation, found themselves locked in a brutal conflict with the Rapid Support Forces, a paramilitary group born from the ashes of Darfur's own tragedy. This was not a conflict contained to the halls of power. It spilled onto the streets, turning neighborhoods into battlegrounds and shattering the lives of millions. This is the story of Sudan's civil war, a conflict that has ripped the nation apart and plunged it into a humanitarian catastrophe of immense proportions. The fighting, concentrated in the capital city of Khartoum and the western region of Darfur, has claimed the lives of tens of thousands. The true death toll, however, is likely far higher, obscured by the chaos and the dangers faced by those who would seek to count the dead. Millions have been displaced, forced to flee their homes for the uncertain safety of makeshift camps, or to embark on perilous journeys across borders, seeking refuge in neighboring countries already grappling with their own challenges. The conflict has also exacerbated an already dire humanitarian crisis. Sudan, even before the outbreak of fighting, was grappling with food insecurity and economic instability. The war has only deepened these wounds, disrupting supply chains, hindering humanitarian access, and pushing millions to the brink of starvation. Hospitals, already overwhelmed, struggle to cope with the influx of wounded, often lacking basic supplies and medications. As the guns fall silent in some areas, the true cost of this conflict is only beginning to reveal itself. The scars of war, both physical and psychological, will run deep, shaping the future of Sudan for generations to come. To understand the roots of Sudan's current crisis, one must look back to the fall of Omar al-Bashir. A dictator who ruled Sudan with an iron fist for 3 decades, al-Bashir was ousted in 2019, following months of popular protests. His removal ushered in a period of cautious optimism, a chance for Sudan to transition to a democratic system of governance. This transition was to be overseen by a sovereign council, a body composed of both military and civilian leaders. At the helm of the military faction was General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, a career military officer who had risen through the ranks of the Sudanese armed forces. His counterpart on the civilian side was Abdallah Hamdok, an economist who had previously served in international organizations. Theirs was an uneasy alliance, marked by mistrust and competing visions for the future of Sudan. Further complicating the picture was the presence of Mohammed Hamdan Daglo, better known by his nom de guerre Hemeti. Hemeti was the leader of the Rapid Support Forces, a powerful paramilitary group with roots in the Janjaweed militias that had terrorized Darfur in the early 2000s. Under al-Bashir, the RSF had acted as an extension of the regime's repressive apparatus, accused of widespread human rights abuses. In the post-Bashir era, Hemeti sought to reposition himself and the RSF. He pledged allegiance to the transitional government and even participated in the removal of al-Bashir. However, his true intentions remained shrouded in doubt. The RSF, with its vast wealth derived from gold mining and other illicit activities, represented a formidable force, one that Hemeti could use to advance his own ambitions. The stage was set for a power struggle, a clash of titans vying for control of Sudan's destiny. The Rapid Support Forces, despite their brutal origins, were not simply a band of undisciplined fighters. They were a well-equipped and well-funded force, hardened by years of combat experience in Darfur and beyond. Hemeti, a shrewd and ruthless operator, had cultivated close ties with foreign powers, including the United Arab Emirates and Russia, securing access to weapons, training, and financial support. As tensions mounted within the Sovereign Council, Hemeti sensed an opportunity. He began to position the RSF as a guarantor of stability, a force capable of reining in the chaos that threatened to engulf Sudan. He skillfully exploited divisions within the military, appealing to those officers who resented the prospect of civilian rule and feared losing their grip on power. The RSF's rise was as swift as it was brutal. When the fighting erupted in April 2023, they moved with a speed and ferocity that caught the Sudanese armed forces off guard. Key government buildings, including the presidential palace and the international airport, fell into their hands. Khartoum, once a symbol of Sudan's aspirations for a brighter future, became a battleground. Hemeti's gamble appeared to have paid off. The RSF had seized the initiative, but the war was far from over. The Sudanese armed forces, though battered and demoralized, still possessed significant military capabilities. Moreover, the RSF's brutality, their indiscriminate shelling of civilian areas and reports of widespread looting and human rights abuses, alienated many Sudanese, uniting them in their opposition to Hemeti's ambitions. The fall of Khartoum to the Rapid Support Forces sent shockwaves through Sudan and the international community. The city, a sprawling metropolis situated at the confluence of the Blue and White Nile rivers, had long been the heart of Sudan, a center of commerce, culture, and political power. Now it was a city under siege, its streets transformed into battlegrounds, its once vibrant neighborhoods reduced to rubble. RSF fighters, many of them battle-hardened veterans of Darfur's conflict, roamed the streets, setting up checkpoints, looting homes and businesses, and terrorizing civilians. The Sudanese armed forces, though outmaneuvered in the early days of the fighting, responded with artillery and airstrikes, often with little regard for civilian casualties. Caught in the crossfire were millions of innocent civilians. Trapped in their homes, they endured days, then weeks, of relentless shelling, their lives upended by the sudden and brutal eruption of violence. Food and water became scarce, electricity flickered and died, and medical care was all but non-existent. Those who dared to venture out in search of safety risked being caught in the crossfire, their bodies riddled with bullets or torn apart by shrapnel. As the fighting raged on, a mass exodus from Khartoum began. Families, clutching what few possessions they could carry, fled the city on foot, in cars, or on overcrowded buses, desperate to escape the violence. They sought refuge in makeshift camps scattered along the outskirts of the city, or embarked on perilous journeys to neighboring countries, their futures uncertain. Section 5. Turning the tide, the military regroups. The initial shock of the RSF's offensive began to wear off. The Sudanese armed forces, though battered and demoralized, still possessed significant military capabilities. They could call upon a larger pool of manpower, a more established chain of command, and, crucially, air power. Moreover, the RSF's brutality, their indiscriminate shelling of civilian areas and reports of widespread looting and human rights abuses, galvanized opposition to their rule. General al-Burhan, after regrouping his forces, launched a counteroffensive. The fighting was fierce, marked by street-to-street battles and relentless artillery duels. Slowly, painstakingly, the military began to claw back territory, pushing the RSF out of key neighborhoods and strategic locations. A key turning point came in March 2025, with the recapture of Khartoum's international airport. The airport, which had been under RSF control since the early days of the conflict, was a vital lifeline for the city, allowing for the delivery of humanitarian aid and the evacuation of wounded civilians. Its recapture was a major symbolic victory for the military, boosting morale and signaling a shift in the balance of power. The military's resurgence did not signal an end to the conflict, but it did mark a turning point. The RSF, though driven from Khartoum, remained a potent force, particularly in their stronghold of Darfur. The war was far from over, but the military's gains offered a glimmer of hope, a chance for a negotiated settlement that could end the bloodshed and pave the way for a more peaceful future. The Rapid Support Forces, often abbreviated as RSF, have been making strategic moves to establish new strongholds. Their tactics have evolved and their influence appears to be expanding. But the question remains, can they sustain these gains in the long term? Only time will tell. The conflict has led to an unprecedented humanitarian crisis. Thousands of civilians are caught in the crossfire, and essential supplies are running dangerously low. Aid organizations are struggling to provide relief, and the international community is watching closely. Yet despite these efforts, the situation on the ground remains dire. As the conflict drags on, both sides seem locked in a stalemate. Diplomatic efforts have been made, but a lasting resolution seems elusive. The people of Sudan are yearning for peace, but the path to it is fraught with challenges. Can a compromise be reached, or will the fighting continue indefinitely? There have been numerous calls for peace from various international bodies and local leaders. However, the actions taken so far have been limited. The world is urging for a ceasefire and negotiations, but the response has been lukewarm. It's clear that more decisive action is needed to bring about meaningful change.